Welcome back. I am excited to introduce you to our next guest. It is, in the spirit of Father's Day, a very different kind of Father's Day story and tribute, but it's a very important story that I know you are all going to want to hear and want to hear more about. So let me bring on Angela Hoy, who is our author of Children Born of Wildfire. Angela, thank you so much for being with us today.
It's great to be with you, Lauren.
It's a pleasure, and I'm very, very, to say happy is not the right word. I mean, I am grateful to you for taking the time and going through the process of writing this book and being able to share it with us. So I'm going to start by letting you tell us a little bit about your past and your story, and then we'll go into how it became a book, okay?
Okay, that sounds great. Well, my story is about two little girls who were stolen away from their devoted father and dropped into a world of lies and instability and abuse. And my sister and I were 4 and 2. I was 4, she was 2 when this happened to us. And we had basically a terrible childhood. But somehow we survived it all. And I go into quite a few different stories. And when we grew up and our lives were good and we were thriving, we decided to go on a quest to find our father. And we were very nervous about it because we'd been told many lies, but I had been told that he was dead. And for some reason, I just couldn't bring myself to believe that. And so we just went on this quest. And ultimately, lots of twists and turns, we found him. And this is where the story takes a turn toward the better. And we had many lovely years with him. And that's basically the story. But in parts, it reads like a family mystery. In other parts, it reads like a crime novel. But in the end, there is this redemptive point at which the story turns for us.
That's exactly how I took it, was that in the end, it's redemption and forgiveness and an awful lot of healing. So take us back to the process that you went through to turn this really bad time in your life into something good.
Well, I never really had the idea to write a memoir, but my family, my father and my stepmom and my sister and my brother-in-law kept saying to me, our story, you have to write our story. It would be a really good memoir. Nobody will believe it.
And
Yeah,
why you, of all the people in the family?
yeah, I guess because I did more writing for a living than anyone else did. We have several really good writers in our family, which people will discover when they read my book, because there are some chapters by other family members. But they just felt like I was the one who was going to write this story. And so it took a few years of convincing. But, as I was taking writing classes, because I'm a lifelong learner, the stories about my childhood kept popping up. We had free time in different classes, and another story would pop up. And so I had a little collection of stories about my childhood. And so finally, as my dad was aging, I felt like I needed to do this for him. And my family pointed out to me that it could help others who were recovering from similar types of childhoods. And so I took the plunge and started to turn the stories into a book. It took a long time, but I was really motivated for my dad's sake because I really wanted his side of the story to come out.
So take us back to the earliest days, your earliest memories of how this all came about, and then give us a little more of the story. Not so much that we don't want to read the book, because of course we will anyway. It's a way in, a small TV segment that you're going to give us the whole story. But I believe there are people watching, and maybe people watching know people who could be among those, like your family, to use this as an opportunity to say, wait a minute, that could be me, and maybe this would be something we should do.
Well, as I can started to write the book, I was very motivated to bring hope to people who are trying to recover from traumatic childhoods. Um, and I started the book with a recurring nightmare that I had when I was a little girl. I don't remember how old I was when it started, but it was really quite a terrifying nightmare that I had recurring for a number of years. And it was of me and my sister in a castle. And we were at the head of some stairs and we were walking down stairs that curved around. And, I can still feel the terror. And we couldn't see all the way down the stairs and it was dark. And there was a booming male voice at the bottom of the stairs that was drawing us down. We were very, very afraid. And really, the essence of that dream was that no one was coming to help us. And I always woke up at the point at which my sister was being pulled ahead of me and down into this darkness. And I started the book that way because really that was kind of a metaphor of our childhood. And I was quite surprised that I had such a prescient dream at a young age. But that is how the book started. And I just picked stories that I remembered very clearly. And I started writing them, not in any particular order, but they turned out to be in order of memory. So it became chronological. But then I started to get stuck. And so what I would do is I would call my sister. She was very young. She was only 2 when we were stolen, so she has no memory of that. And I have very little. Unfortunately, or maybe it's fortunate, I have no memory of any of the moves that we were part of when we were kids. And we moved probably a dozen times. No memory. It's all gone. I think it was very traumatic for me. But as my sister got older, she, of course, would remember things. And so I would call her and talk to her about a memory, and she would say yes, or I don't remember that. And then I would call my dad and ask him. And finally, I realized I had to go and talk to my dad. And so I did. Um, and what I discovered to my shock was that he was carrying an enormous load of sorrow and guilt about not being able to rescue us when we were children. And I talk about it in the book. I went and talked to him one day. We spent the morning together, and he wept. He just cried because he had never stopped looking for us, but he was blocked from finding us by the courts because more lies had been told. And so when I gave him the opportunity to tell me his side of the story, he the floodgates opened. I mean, I'm getting a little emotional about it. It's very emotional in the book. I just put it on the page the way it happened. It was raw because I feel like, these parents who have been mislabeled and lied to and taken advantage of, they never really get a chance to tell their story. And what he was saying to me in so many words was that he just felt so bad for the childhood that we'd had, and it wasn't what he wanted for us.
Now, how old was he when you reconnected? And how old were you?
My sister was 29 and I was 31. My dad was newly remarried and he was, let's see, he was in his late 50s, early 60s at that point. So the reunion is a beautiful part of the book. And he was so overwhelmed, but so anxious to reconnect with us. And one of the things I wrote about in the book was when he was aware that we were alive and well, um, he wanted to go and see my sister right away because she didn't live that far from him. And so he went that same day. But he called me, and I was living in a different city, and he wanted to come right away. And I said no. And I did that because I wanted to, first of all, make sure that I could maintain control of my emotions because I was, you know, still very vulnerable at that point in my life. I was 31 and trying desperately to heal from all of the things that had happened to us. But I asked him to wait. And then I came to him a few days later and we had a really lovely long talk.
And with the relationship with your mother, then, I mean, she basically, with the collaboration of her family, managed to steal you away and really keep you away. So, how, tell me about how you've come to terms with that.
Well, our mother, I won't give any spoilers, but she did not want to be a mother. She wanted to go out in the world and have fun. And here she had these two girls. And so she got herself into a pile of trouble and then she left. And that's when we were probably just turned 4 and 2. So she was gone out of the picture. And it was my maternal grandparents who concocted this story about taking us girls on a vacation and giving dad a break, who took us and basically stole us. These days it would be called an Amber Alert. And Dad didn't realize that he was not going to see us again for 27 years. But what happened was our grandparents took us and we ended up in the north, the most northerly part of British Columbia in Canada, way up in the north. I mean, there wasn't much there. And my grandmother, once she had us settled there, went on a mission to get our mother back. And our mother had gone to Europe. So it took her months to figure out where she was. But I think that our mother came back because she had run out of money and or she got herself into trouble. And she wanted to leave where she was and come back to Canada, which is where we were living. And so that's what happened. She came back, and my grandparents basically tried to force her to take care of us. And at some point, she decided she was going to do it for reasons unknown. And then I think she and our grandmother collaborated to keep our father away from us by telling lies to a judge.
So it's more than a personal story. We all know that, parenting is not an easy job, and it's not for everyone, and it should come with some kind of licensure. I mean,
Yes.
there should be some opportunity to prove that you can be a parent, although sometimes great parents are grown out of the moment and other times it doesn't work out that way. But no matter what happens, it's the children who suffer. And
Yes.
in this case, you have gone through a process of healing through this journey. And it doesn't have to be this particular journey. It could be for anyone who's had trauma in their childhood into adulthood or even current, right? It's the process of healing a trauma. So I have to believe that there were times in your process that you wanted to stop because it was really painful. And how did you kind of work your way through the process?
Well, when I began to put all the pieces together, and I, as an adult, and I saw how much we had been manipulated, I felt a profound sense of betrayal, very, very deeply. It's just something different when your family betrays you. And I was very angry as a young adult in my 20s and very self-destructive. But I got to a point in my life, in my late 20s, when I had really no one and nothing left. I had gotten myself into a place where I had no money, I had no friends, and I was very sick. So I showed up at my sister and brother-in-law's place. They had a young family, tiny little duplex, and I showed up and I said, "I'm sick. I just need somewhere to rest for a few days, and then I'll be out of your hair." And through that time with them, I realized that my anger had nearly destroyed me. That yes, I had a right, if you will, to be angry. There were certainly plenty of things that were done to me that were absolutely unfair and cruel. But I knew that the path that I was on was uh, going to ultimately kill me. And I had been suicidal in that whole time frame. So being around my sister and her baby girl helped me to reattach myself to life. And just a darling little girl, my niece. And, it was the place I needed to be to kind of understand that there was still some hope. So I started making decisions as I got better. And I decided that I was going to keep my life very simple. I was going to get better emotionally, however that was going to happen. And I didn't even have a sense at that point about forgiveness because I was just such a mess. Um, but then ultimately, I began to read books. The book that was pivotal for me was Codependent No More by Melody Beattie, who sadly recently passed away. And I just devoured that book because I wanted to understand everything had been my fault, right? My whole life. And even as I was trying to recover from the things that were my fault, I felt like I was the problem. And that book taught me that I wasn't the problem necessarily, and that the only person in my life I was ever going to successfully change was me.
What a
And
great place
so
to start.
it was the start, and it took me years, Lauren, years. And I finally realized that the only way to truly be better and to get rid of that anger was to forgive. Oh, I didn't want to. I did not want to forgive. But I understood that it was important. And I also understood that forgiveness did not mean I had to have these individuals back in my life if I didn't want them. And there were several I never wanted to see again. Um, and so I underwent what I call my mountain climb to forgive everyone who had hurt me when I was little. And it was a process. And I was not successful the first few times, but I got there because I was determined to let go and to try and be a new person.
And we're glad you didn't give up. Thank you. Thank you for getting stronger with every step. So, Angela, where can we find the book? Where can we find out more information? Tell us how we can learn more about your journey.
Well, the book again is Children Born of Wildfire. It's you can find out everything on my website, which is angelahoywriter.com. And I've got my book there. I also have poetry that I've written. I write poetry from the perspective of someone who's had a traumatic childhood. And so folks might find some of that helpful. My blog is there, everything is there, but the book, the memoir is there and available to buy.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you for taking the time to share with us. And I know our readers are going to want to know more. So keep your eye out. They'll be visiting. And we'll look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back.